Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Engineering Our Future podcast. My name is Nikolai, and I'm joined here with Luis. I'm so excited to be recording another episode with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm excited. I think we kind of took a little break or maybe an extended break for the summer, but I'm excited to be back in the recording
Yes,
mode.
definitely back, definitely in the full groove of things. I know, our families are in school now, and you had a little one starting school, so that's pretty awesome life moment.
Hmm.
I'm sure it's been an adjustment for you too.
Oh yeah.
Um, well, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about strengths. Hopefully we can discuss what is it, like what is a strength, why does it matter, how do we find them, how do we figure out what we're good at, stuff like that, and then ways to apply it. But before we get into that, I just wanted to share this experience I had, or just kind of this thought that I had recently. Is I joined a NFL fantasy football league with some friends, and I have not played fantasy football for about 7 or 8 years. So it just felt really foreign. It just felt really weird. But was having this thought while we were doing our draft. We did our draft last week, and I was just thinking, man, okay, we got this list of players that we are all trying to put into various positions. We're all trying to get the number one pick for that particular position, so quarterback or running back. And I just kind of thought about it in terms of work. Is if there was a, we'll call it a draft at our office, would I be a number one pick, or would I even be in the top five? And it was such an interesting thought to me because I know I think about, working hard. I know I think about working smarter and, giving my best, working with excellence, however you want to phrase it. Those are always on my mind. But working hard is one thing, but having your hard work add value to others, that's a completely different thing, right? And that's really what matters to our companies. That's what matters to our projects. And so I think that's what will distinguish us if we had our, quote unquote office draft. So just something to think about. But I know, so I look at all these QBs and running backs and wide receivers, and I look at their stats. And so strengths, if we want to kind of apply this analogy, there is just going to be something that's going to be added to our stats and improve us at work, improve us outside of work, and so yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation. Do you have any initial thoughts on strengths before we kind of dive in?
No, I think that analogy is pretty good. And I mean, I am a big sports fan, so I like kind of just thinking about. And I played tennis for a long time, so just kind of how the skills on sports side kind of translate into the skills when you are at the office where you work. Like you are working as a team, like you said, will you be the number one pick? But I also think trying to define where you fit within the team. Are you the quarterback? Are you the running back? Are you defensive? Like where do you fit within the team, and how can you be your best self at that position so the team can win? And I think we'll
Yeah.
kind of get into that a little bit in this episode. And yeah, that's kind of how I think. I think it's a great analogy, and I'm sure we're gonna get into that later on.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we all have unique abilities, and you might be listening to this episode and thinking, you're just kind of feeling beat down at the moment, or maybe you're feeling like you're not really tapping into your unique abilities because you are having to do something outside of your comfort zone, or something just beyond your skill set, or something beyond something you even enjoy doing. But we really do all have unique abilities, unique strengths. And in an ideal world, my version of an ideal world is that we're tapping into these unique abilities every single day, and we're being able to use these strengths to add value to people around us, whether that's my family or whether that's people at work. My goal, my ideal world is using these strengths to add value, love, kindness, help, whatever it is, to these people. And when it comes to work, how I was just mentioning, it's not about the hard work you do or the value that you do, but it's we're getting paid based on the value that we're bringing to that job. And so we're hopefully going to be covering raises here very soon, and so that concept will apply there again. but we really do get paid on the value that we bring, the strengths that we are bringing. And when I'm interviewing people, I'm trying to find people that have strengths in some of the gaps that we have on our team. I don't want 10 people with the exact same strength because that doesn't really make us a well-rounded team. We want to provide a variety of strengths, and I think another thing I wanted to make sure I said is there's no strength that's better than another.
Hmm.
I'll use a friendly person and then like the stereotypical analytical engineer person as an example here. So, friendly and upbeat and energetic. And when I think of engineers, even though I am an engineer, I kind of think that maybe we're a little more dull and boring and not so expressive. Um, we need people who are very analytical and non-expressive just as much as we need non-analytical expressive people. So there's no strength that is better than another. We all need to work together and figure out how to work as a team. And then the other thing with strengths is I feel like, and maybe you had a different upbringing than I did, and I had a great childhood, but I feel like the majority of us kind of get strengths programmed out of us at an early age because we're always focusing on what we've done wrong. You
Hmm.
know, uh, I'll use a report card as an example. If you got five A's and a C, which one do you think your parents are talking to you about,
Yep.
right? They're going to talk to you about the C. What did you do wrong? What's wrong with you? Whatever phrase they're using, and it's just like, hey, but I had five A's. Like these are things that I'm really good at. Why are we focusing on this one thing that I'm not so good at? And now I tell my kid, it's hard. I just said that, but my kids, there are some things that they're good at school and some things they're not. And I really am fighting the urge to like make them improve the things that they're not so good at.
Mhm.
Uh, my wife is actually really good at finding the things that they're good at and letting them spend more time in those. So I'm really grateful for her there. Um, but yeah, it's just strengths are weird. We see somebody else's strengths, we kind of want that, or we're envious of that, or we just focus on things we're not as good at. But I promise you, once we start, as in your professional life, once you start to really lean into your strengths, the you're going to see a lot of um, growth right away. You're going to see some financial benefits to that if your boss is also seeing the value of that strength, and it's just going to be a lot easier. I know that for me, I feel like a lot of my natural strengths don't necessarily mesh well with the stereotypical engineering job.
Mhm.
I'm not very analytical or as analytical as like a structural engineer should be. And I always wanted to do bridges, and I ended up moving into kind of the roadway side of things. Um, but once I was able to kind of say, okay, structures is not really going to be my thing. It's not my jam. It's I was able to lean into what strengths were going to help me, and then roadway being the discipline that we ended up going through. I just saw a lot of benefits and just a lot more enjoyment in my work when I wasn't necessarily using all my weaknesses on a daily basis. Um, so, anyways, uh, I was reading something. So like what is a strength, right? And you can Google it, and I hope that you do. And if you're kind of just early in your strengths journey, Gallup.com is a really great resource for that. They have a book called Strengths Finders and a whole assessment online. I love
Yeah.
it. I did
I
that
think
years
I have
ago,
the
and then I
book
did it a few
somewhere in
years
my
later.
background.
You got it over there?
Yeah, I think I have it somewhere. And it's really
Yeah.
good because I mean it gives you like really short and like actionable things you're reading through. Like if you're this type of this your strength, these kind of what your strengths within that strength they are, and like some of the things you should work on. Yeah, it's a great book. Really recommend it.
Yes. I highly recommend it as well. But again, you're going to Google strengths and you're going to get 50 different, we'll call them definitions of what a strength is. And I'm kicking myself for not writing the guy's name down that I read this part on, but I really did kind of align with this definition is a strength is made up of three things: gifts, loves, and skills. And so obviously gifts is kind of this natural talent that you have. The thing that naturally maybe comes easy to you, maybe when maybe it's a thing that people often say, man, you're really good at this. Because that's another thing with the strength is sometimes we don't even realize that it is something we're good at or a gift. We don't really realize it is something we're gifted in. And then you have your love, the something that you're passionate about doing. Maybe you're working on something and time just flies by. That happened to me yesterday at work. Somebody asked me, "Hey, you're the last person at the office." It was like 6 or 6:30. I didn't even know it was 6 o'clock. Like I had just gotten so into my job for those last 3 or 4 hours that it just flew by, but it was something I was loved doing. And then you have the skills because strengths we need to continually improve them. And so skills is the knowledge and the capability that you acquired over time, but then we're going to really lean into that and see how much more we can grow those strengths. So I really liked that definition of a strength. And then it's like, okay, well then cool. I need to learn what my strength is. I don't necessarily know if I can identify it right now, but why does this even matter? Because that's another thing too. So many things that we discuss, I think they're great, but until people realize why does this thing matter? Why does time management matter? Why does this strength matter? Why does whatever other topics that we've talked about, why does it matter? People aren't really going to dive into it. And so I think that strengths really do matter a lot. When you work in your strengths, you're going to find that you're a lot more engaged. Again, you're going to see a lot of this data and science from Gallup. If you go onto their website and you start researching strengths, they have a ton of data that says that people who work in their strengths are much more engaged. And then on the manager side of things, you look at engaged people versus non-engaged people, and who's leaving, who's looking for a new job, who's stealing time from you, stuff like that. You're on the non-engaged side, but if you can get people to work in their strengths, they're going to be a lot more engaged and loyal and love what they do a lot more. I think Gallup says that they are 6 times more likely to be engaged at work if they're using their strengths at work. Um, we are going to move the needle a lot more. So if I use something that's my strength, I can move from A to B quicker, or I can do a greater distance between A and B versus if I were to use a weakness. It's going to take me twice as long, 5 times as long. I'm not going to get the results that I'm looking for as much. I may get the job done, but it's not necessarily to the best of my abilities because it's not a strength of mine. Teams are more productive when they use their strengths. They're going to feel a lot more connected with each other. So, again, in a work environment, knowing your strengths, knowing how you fit into the team, knowing how you bring a unique value to the team, that's going to honestly increase your overall well being. It's going to make your team and your company more profitable. Hopefully it would lead to some sort of financial increases as well. Maybe you're feeling stuck in your career because you chose a career, it's working fine, but you're not really using your strengths. But you don't want to keep wasting 20 more years doing that. So finding your strengths is going to help you really identify the right career. And I will even go as far to say, so I already mentioned, some of my strengths I don't feel are perfect for a engineer, quote unquote engineer, but I have a great career in engineering field. I have the skills we already broke down, right? Gifts, love, skills. I have the skills, the knowledge, the capabilities to do engineering work, but then I combine that with the gift and the things that I love to do, and I'm able to use that strength in my career. So I don't know. So do you have any other things on why a strength really should matter to us?
I was just taking a couple notes here as we were kind of talking about as you were talking about some of these, and I think you mentioned just everything you mentioned. I really resonate with, and I think you can say that some people see it as well as like finding your passion instead of like finding your strength. But I think there's a big difference between passion and strength. Like I think with strength, you are good at it. And I think you probably have similar thoughts than me on this. But with the strength, you're good at it. You are making progress toward things. With passion, you could suck at that. You could like it a lot, but you may not never make a living out of it. So when you combine these strengths, the things you're good at, and then matches your passion, I think that's when you have that power combination where you're talking about 6, 7 p.m. rolls around, you're just focused on your work, you're really enjoying what you're doing, you're great at it. And that's when you really start finding that fulfillment. And I think also the important part of this is, like you mentioned, just finding other people that you trust, that are in your inner circle, your family, your friends, that can tell you, hey, I think these, you're really good at this. You may not realize it. Some people may just come up to you and say, hey, you're really good at time management. You're always on time. You're always planning our vacations. You're always doing all these things. And maybe you could use those skills to something great in your career. You can become a product manager. You can become a maybe higher level person at your company. But if you never get the feedback from people around you that are going to be honest with you, I think it's going to be really hard to really understand what you're good at, because sometimes we're just kind of in a bubble of ourselves, just kind of, hey, I think I'm good at some of these things, but it's kind of hard to tell. So as you get feedback from the outside, I think that's really important. I think on the
Yeah.
why, on the strength, I think it's kind of what you're talking about, just getting the fulfillment out of your career. Like, why do you go to work every single day? Well, we do need to pay rent, we need to feed our families, we need to do all these things, but having enjoyment when you're doing that, I think it's also very important. Finding a company that supports those strengths and nourishment is important when you're at this type of companies. Um,
Yeah.
Also, how are you going to use those strengths at your company? We're talking about the beginning on your draft kind of analogy. Are you the quarterback that is kind of leading everyone and directing kind of the play of the company, or are you the defensive line where you're just kind of in just getting your hands dirty every day, doing a lot of engineering work? Like, how are you leading with the strength? So defining the why and the how, I think, is also very important when you're thinking about these, and you need to, sometimes it's kind of hard to define them, but as you start analyzing, you maybe do a little bit of review, like we've talked about doing annual reviews, weekly reviews and such, you may start seeing some patterns, and you may start seeing how those strengths really apply to what you're doing and how you can use them to be successful in your career.
Yeah, I mean that's great and a perfect kind of lead into all right, I do care about strengths now. How do I figure out what mine are? And you mentioned, what are people telling you that you're good at? That's probably a really good place to start. Maybe your annual review, maybe your boss or supervisor kind of shares some of the talents and skills that they see that you possess. If other people are bringing it up, I would definitely pay attention to it. And it's so easy. I don't know about you. It makes me so uncomfortable when somebody says, "Oh, you do this well." I just don't like it. I like to be behind the scenes. If nobody really saw me working, I would have no problem with that. I just I don't enjoy being in a spotlight or something like that. Even if somebody's like telling me that I'm doing a good job on something. But if people are telling you those things, pay attention, write them down, see if maybe multiple people are telling you, and that should be a pretty good indicator that, hey, maybe I do have a gift here.
Yeah.
uh, if other some other questions you can ask yourself for trying to think about strengths and start kind of this thought process here is, in your job now, whether you love your job now or you don't love your job now, like what specific things do you kind of love the most? What specific things do you or activities do you feel like you maybe kind of lose track of time doing, or you kind of just get lost in it? Like you just the whole world kind of disappears because you just love doing this particular task, activity, or whatever. Um, what do you do in your spare time? What topics do you like to talk about? What hobbies do you have? I actually found some of the hobbies that I have. I was able to think about, golf, and I love golf. It's to me the best sport ever. I cannot get enough.
I
But
tend
I
to
was able to
disagree.
think about, okay, what specific thing about golf is it that I like, and can I apply that in my job? And yes, I'm not analytical, but I love on a golf course, you're trying to piece together the whole. You're trying to figure out how to go from A to B, and then you have a shot, and then you have to make your adjustment from there. I love that. Yesterday, I was having a career conversation with a team member, and they were kind of sharing some of their career plans. We've been kind of talking through this now for a while, but they were able to finally say, "I think I want to go here in 5 years." So that's kind of the conversation that we had yesterday. So I said, "Great. We have an idea of where we want to go. Now let's kind of create this plan together on how we're going to get there." I loved that. So anyways, just kind of start thinking of those things you get lost in that people say you're good at. uh, then we have, the assessment, Strength Finders 2.0. Great place to start. Highly recommend it. I did it, like I said, and then I did it in, like, I think 3 years later, or maybe 2 years later, just because I was curious. Now that I had known a little bit, I had learned a little bit more about myself. I felt like I was a lot more self aware. I took it again, and I just did the one that gives you a top five, and 4 of the 5 were the exact same as it was before. I thought that was pretty cool. And maybe the 5th one was kind of already in a tie at, the first time. I don't know what it was, but I thought that was really cool. What about you? I think have you done that assessment?
I did, yeah, yeah. I think I can
Do
see
you
the book. I think I
remember
see the book
one
from
of
here.
the strengths that it said?
I don't remember exactly. I'll have to. It was probably like 3, 4 years ago. It was kind of a while
Sure.
ago. I don't remember, but I do remember just enjoying kind of the process. And like when I got the results, like, oh, that makes sense. Like you could tell in the back of your mind, oh, I'm good at. I don't remember exactly. I don't want to really say exactly what it was. I don't remember,
Sure.
but you say, oh, I'm actually that actually makes sense now that I read it. That actually makes a lot of sense. I was going to add, as you were talking about um, golf, which I don't think is the best sport, but it's just my opinion. I do enjoy. I mean, I do enjoy kind of the aspect where you're kind of talking to people and like playing and the strategy. And I was just gonna say that I was watching the U.S. Open, the tennis U.S. Open this week. It's just starting, and I was watching it with my wife, and she goes, I don't know how these people can have so many routines. They're just like they're getting the core and do the same thing every time, years on end. Like they just have this routine, and it seems like so intense. We're also watching the quarterback documentary on Netflix, and I think that's kind of where they
Oh,
were
okay.
talking about a lot of that. Like they're just focused on the strategy, making sure every week they're at their top, at their best they can be, and I think that's a great mindset to have as well. I love sports. I watch sports. I could watch sports every single day if I could. And I think it's because of that. It's because how disciplined all these athletes are. And obviously, I played maybe not. I wasn't like a pro, but I was like pretty high level competition in tennis all up to college. So I kind of understand what takes to be good and what takes to be good for 10, 15, sometimes 20 plus years, some of these athletes nowadays. And when I compare that to our careers, I think we need to approach maybe not to that extreme, but we need to be make sure we have like our routines. Like, am I reviewing my work every morning? Am I looking at my calendar? Am I looking at what's going to happen in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, doing those reviews, setting goals? I think all of that is really important. And I did to take a lot of that from just playing sports and doing it for 15, 20 years. And I think not only that, but just the passion and obviously the strength in terms of like the ability they have to do that so frequently, I think is a great example as well. And I think when I was taking the P exam, I remember I've talked to this in other episodes as well. But the way I prepared, I was literally just recreating what I thought was going to be sitting at the P exam. The chair, I wasn't sitting on this nice desk chair that is comfy and everything. I was just sitting on a office chair that wasn't very comfortable. I just had the stuff that I was doing. I did 3 practice exams, and I was eating the same those 3 exams because that was gonna eat during the actual exam. I was making sure I was kind of feeling my body, like how do I feel in the morning, how do I feel in the afternoon. I was literally narrowing down everything, every single piece. It was kind of obsessive, but at the same time, when I got to the exam, I felt like it was just another practice exam. It was really comfortable. I had the same experience that I did during 3 exams, and I think that was part of me having a successful exam. And I think a lot of people kind of take it lightly, but I know, I went all in, and maybe it
Yeah.
was too much, but I think that's sometimes what you need to really be great and have your career move forward and have all the experience that we are talking about here in this episode.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think if we can really go all in on using our strengths, we're going to find a lot more fulfillment. We're going to be a lot more engaged. Uh, I even say that I think you're going to attract people to you, because when you are using your strengths and other people are not, and you're going to have a lot more happiness and just joy in your work, that's contagious. People are going to see that and they're going to be like, why is Nikolai or why is Luis so, how do they enjoy this stuff so much? You really are going to attract other people and they might be asking you questions, and then you can help them discover their strengths and help them find ways to apply it. We need to practice, improve, and repeat our strengths. So maybe you're in the early stages. You're just kind of thinking, I think I'm good at this. I think this might be my strength. Give it some time and play with it a little bit. Find daily opportunities to practice that. If you're not using your strengths for days or weeks on end, you will get burnout. Like I,
Mhm.
I promise you, you will get burned out. And then, once you start to really lean into your strengths, I would encourage you to really kind of identify what is that return on that investment for your strength. And I'll use one of my strengths is just encouraging others, and you can see encouraging others does not really play
Mhm.
well for engineers. Like encouraging others is not going to design a bridge, if it's just not. But now in my career, I've become a group leader. I have 20 some people in my team, and being encouraging is a valuable skill to have. And so developing this strength, and it's so funny too, because when I started to discover like encouragement is a strength or a skill, I thought, "What? That's a dumb skill." Like, you're just encouraging people. You're saying nice things to people. You're identifying what they're good at and telling them what they're good at. Doesn't everybody do that? And then you get into the workplace and you're like, "Oh, yeah, people don't do that as much as I think they should." And so I've been able to now see and lean into this strength, and I get to use it every single day with my team. And I'm preparing for my annual review, so people are giving me some feedback for the year, and it's just been great to kind of see that they actually do feel this, and so many people have been kind of sharing in that feedback that encouraging, the just bringing a team together has gone very well. It just was really great to see that. So I'm kind of on a high this week just by seeing some of those things
Yeah.
come to fulfillment after a year of work, right? And then I think the last thing is don't don't think you need to do a 180 overnight, and just commit to small improvements, tiny little, steps in that direction. It's gonna get better over time, and we have plenty of other things to do. I have plenty of things at work I need to get done. I can't just, go crazy going, just trying to practice my strength, but I need to be intentional in finding ways to use it, to improve it, and then just repeat that process. So,
Yeah.
any last comments or questions on strengths that I didn't cover?
I don't think so. I think I want to just kind of give a little summary and we can work on these together. But on just finding the strength, I think it seems a little subjective. It's not like something concrete that you can, okay, here's the 10-step process where you go and you find what your strength is. I think
Yeah,
is more of a continual pursuit of just finding what you're good at over time, and that could change. Like you could be a great engineer, and then as you move up in your career, then you can become a great manager, and maybe engineering kind of goes to the second page. But it's to me it's kind of using and establishing kind of those routines that we're talking about, like just the tiny habits every day, every month, every year that really will start compounding with your career. For me, it's just simply doing a quick weekly review. It takes me 10 minutes. Look at the notes I took in the past week. Look at the projects I was working on, what tasks were completed, what tasks didn't get done this week or needs to be done next week, and just what went well, what didn't go well, what can I improve on next week, and then move on to next week. I think it just doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking that it's going to take weeks or hours every day to do. It's just little things every day,
yes,
and having kind of a clear goal ahead of you, like what do I want to become in 5 years. I think that's probably one of the most common questions on annual review, like what do you see yourself in 5 years, what do you see yourself in 10 years. And sometimes it's hard, and once we do that and 5 years come around, we're nowhere near that goal, but we have some path that we're pursuing. And I think that's more than just finding the strength right now. Is I think it's finding the strength over time and looking at how can you improve and how can you get better, and finding your quote unquote passion as you go along that matches that strength.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is being intentional about the process.
Hmm.
You know, you may get lucky and stumble into something that you're good at. Uh, we all have strengths. We all have unique abilities to contribute to people around us or our jobs. And so being intentional, I promise, is going to be a great, fulfilling journey, a fulfilling way of living. And it's just fun. It's just way more fun to focus on the things that we're good at versus
Hmm.
not.
Yeah.
So I hope if you right now have not really focused on strengths before, I hope you start. And if you kind of thought about strengths before, but you didn't really kind of finish that, we'll call it the journey. I hope you could pick it up again. And we would love to hear,
Mhm.
if you change anything different, we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really enjoyed this episode. I think that's it's a great way to get back into a good rhythm. I think it's been, I want to say 2-3 months since we didn't record anything. So this is a great way to, I think this school started. I think we're going to get back into a routine, and I'm excited to just continue doing all of this. If you really enjoyed this episode of the Gym Future podcast, you're going to love the content we have over our website at luisfelipeduque.com. You can find the link in the description of this episode, as well as the show notes at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Every episode comes packed a lot of links, a lot of information. So you can find all the show notes and all the information related to this episode over at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Thank you so much for coming back to this episode. Thank you, Jack Winters, for the music. And as always, let's continue engineering our future.